Hey everybody. So today I thought we could take a look at a little project I've been working on for the last couple of weeks. I've done reviews of the Vincent and Bob figures here from Diamond Select, and I just love these guys. I think they're so cool looking, and I bought several sets of them. When you buy this set of these two and the Maximilian figure, you do get a diorama that comes with it, which I do like. I think it looks really cool. But I wanted to make something a little more elaborate. So as you can see here, this is based on that climactic scene near the end of the movie where everybody's running across the bridge when that meteor is coming and crashing through that big, huge, long chasm that they're kind of running across. So this scene right here, I just kind of freeze framed the DVD, but here you can see that scene, and so it's a pretty elaborate special effects scene, and I mean, to make all this crazy detail that's going on around here would have been just really crazy. I mean, there's all kinds of scaffolding and girder work going on here, so I needed to do an extremely simplified version of this, like a very simple version of it. So that's how I came up with the diorama that I did. Okay, so looking back at this now, so you can see, of course, it's got the basic shape of the room that they were in, or that big huge thing. But like I said, it had to be much more simplified. So when I went about doing this, I gotta say I had kind of a basic idea what I wanted it to look like, but really I just kind of made it up as I went along. So this is very rinky-dink and just cobbled together, but somehow I think it turned out pretty decent considering I was just kind of winging it. So I'm going to pull the camera back and let you see what the whole thing looks like, which I kind of hesitate to do because it's going to spoil the illusion of what it looks like, and you'll be able to see just how rinky-dink it is. But nevertheless, I want you to see how I went about putting it together. Okay, so as we pull back here, you can see it's just kind of the shell of how that whole thing looks. And then as we come around the top here and on the side, you can now see that this whole thing is like it's just kind of a weird shaped cone. And so the whole thing is made of foam board. And so I like foam board because it's easy to work with, it's easy to cut, and it glues together nicely, especially with hot glue. And so I had to make just these general shapes to kind of get this cone shape. Originally when I was making this, it was way out here. It was much bigger. And I had to cut it down because it's got to be small enough to try to at least maybe fit on a shelf or something. And realistically, I'd like to get it to be about half the length or even 3/4, but I needed to make it deep enough to get, you know, the depth inside there for the forced perspective look. And so what I did is I started with the basic triangle shape here of the base, and then it was time to make the sides. So I made this triangle shape here, and so everything's of course got to go smaller as it goes back for that forced perspective look. So I just traced around this on a piece of foam board and made 3 more so I could glue the sides on. And then I cut another piece of this triangle shape for the top. So then I just painted everything black inside and out. And originally I had it gray colored, but I think black works better. It kind of helps with the infinity of, you know, how it looks going back there. And so after that, the next step was to start working on the interior. So the first thing I started doing was this kind of girder work right here. So I just wanted to give the indication of it. There was no way I was going to be able to, you know, make as much girder work that you see in that scene. So for that stuff, I ended up using, or to make those, I used this stuff. So at Hobby Lobby, if you go to their wood section, they have these wood pile. I mean, they have all kinds of really cool stuff, but they have this package of, these look like kind of like matchsticks or something like that. And they weren't expensive. I don't even know how much these were. I don't know if the price is on here, but anyway, I just used that to make this stuff. So I put a row of them down here in this corner that goes all the way to the back. Same thing here, and that helps hide the seams, especially once you paint it black. And then same thing here. I just took some silver craft paint and painted these silver, and then just made a line all the way down that way, and that hides that seam. And you know, it's just this kind of a stick thing. And then I just started making the triangles, and so each time I went back the next row, I just made them smaller and shorter, so that way everything, as you see, gets smaller and smaller as it goes back. The old forced perspective. It's fun to build stuff in forced perspective because it makes it look like it goes further back than it actually does. So let's see, the next step was working on the ceiling. So I glued the triangle piece to the top, to the sides, and then if you look in that scene, there's a whole bunch of rows of this scaffolding that goes all the way down, and there was no way I was going to be able to do all that. I mean, that's just crazy. So I just wanted to give the indication of it, so I just did a couple of rows of it. So to make this scaffolding right here, I used this stuff. So this is evergreen scale model plastic, styrene plastic. If you go to the hobby shop, they got all kinds of this stuff. There's half rounds, this square rod, sheet styrene of varying thicknesses, tubes. So that's what I used for this. So there's just a little piece of this plastic, and so I turned the whole diorama upside down, and then just cut little pieces of this this plastic right here, and I first made the ends right here and on right here, and put it at this angle, and then just glued a straight piece all the way across, and then another one all the way across here. And I just used Gorilla Glue gel because it works really good and doesn't run or anything. And then I just cut shorter pieces that were of even length to make the V's, and just glued them in the back. So I made 3 rows of V here, 3 rows of V's here, and then once it gets in the middle, I just kind of made a little decorative one there. And so painted the whole thing silver and then glued it in with Gorilla Glue. But I gotta say, it was really tedious to make that, and it's kind of fragile, and I wanted to make one more, but I really didn't want to make another one of these. So I did a bit of a cheat on that one back there. That one is made of foam board, and I just painted it silver, and I just used a black Sharpie marker to color in the negative space. So it actually turned out pretty good. And so that actually ended up working out really good, because for the grid lines up here, I used this stuff. So this is some pinstriping tape that I bought at O'Reilly's Auto Parts. And so there's 2 different thicknesses. You got a thick one here and a thin one. And so I just used the this thicker stuff to do this front row. And then when you go from the thick one to the thin one, because once again, you got to make sure everything gets, smaller as it goes back. There's a transition point right there where you can tell where the tape changes size. So that row of scaffolding actually hides it. So that worked out really good. It was just kind of a happy little accident that happened there. All right, so let's see. The next thing that I was working on was the bridge. So the bridge, now this is made of foam board, and the reason I was going to make it just go straight across, but the reason I put this bend in it is because I kind of feel like, well, the idea here is these figures are really big. They're bigger to the scale of what this is. I mean, realistically, they should be this tiny. But the idea here is that they come out of this doorway that's way back here, and as they come down the bridge area, they come closer to us, closer to the foreground, and so they look bigger. And then when they leave, the doorway's way over there and they'll look smaller. So that was kind of the idea there. I don't know if that actually works or not, but that was just kind of the point, the idea behind it. And so then I just used hot glue to glue these 3 segments of the bridge together. And then I used that sheet styrene that's got the texture to it. It's like this really thin sheet styrene, and it's got these lines. And I just cut strips of it to put to make a trim on here, so you don't see the bare foam board. It just looks nicer. And then I also used it for the little seam. It hides the seam line, and there's some on the bottom, even though you really can't see it. I also used that for the trim all around the edge here. It just makes it look a little more finished and nice. And then for these little struts underneath the bridge here, I just used the same plastic square rod for this that I used for this stuff. And that was kind of fiddly too, because you have to get it underneath the bridge and angle it, and there's actually some on the other side too, even though you really can't see it. So that was the bridge. And then for these little entrances here, I just took some sheet styrene and cut a little thin piece, and then I just painted it up to look like there's a little hallway back there. So one that goes, this way, and then on this side it's the opposite. But it looks kind of cool. I think it turned out pretty neat, and it makes it look like, there's a corridor back there. All right, so let's see. The next thing was these all these pipes. So in that scene, there's a whole bunch of like propane tanks under the bridge. They're like really big tanks. And so to give the indication for those, I once again at Hobby Lobby in their wood department, they have these bins full of wood dowels. And so I just bought 4 different sizes of the wood doweling and cut them up into varying lengths here. And then, when you glue them in, of course, you go from bigger to smaller, so it makes it look like it goes way back there. And so after cutting them, I put on, for the front ones, these big ones, I just glued on these random little model parts. And it's kind of cool. It makes it look like they're, you know, like greeblies as they're called. Just gives it a little more texture, makes it look more interesting. And some of them have it on the side, like that pipe right there. And I mean, you really can't see those underneath the bridge, but they're there. And then painted them all these different colors. I used, in the scene, there's like a blue, orange, and a white, or a light gray, but I added a darker gray just to add a fourth color, because 3 wasn't enough to kind of vary the coloring on it. And then after painting them up, I just put some pinstriping on there to add those black stripes. And I think it looks cool. It just makes it look a little more interesting. So I glued this first row in, and then I glued the other end row here in, and then the middle row, this one, and then the rest I just went in between, just to kind of give me an idea how to space them. And then just make them all go off into the distance like that. For the ones on the side here, I used some more of that evergreen plastic. So this is like this stuff again, but it's just this tubing. And so I bought 3 different sizes to make it look like it gets smaller. On this side, you can kind of see the one on the very end back there is really small. The smoke back there covers this one. But so I just cut these to the lengths that I felt that I needed. And then I laid the tubing like this on a piece of styrene plastic and drew a circle around it, and then cut it out, and then I glued it onto the end, and then I just took some sandpaper and just sanded it like that until the circumference of the end cap matched the tube, and that way it gives it the tubes an end cap, and it just looks better. That way it doesn't look like some weird looking tube there. Then just painted those orange and added some more pinstriping, and those were good to go. So now Vincent and Bob were actually the last things that I did, and they're actually hung by threads. I mean, you can probably kind of see them. What I like about it is you don't really see them very good, so it looks like they're kind of floating there, as you can see. So originally I was going to use the stands that these come with, the clear ones, but they're kind of clunky, and I didn't really know, you know, how to conceal them very well. And so I just took some black thread, and like here you can probably see the thread right here on Vincent if I can focus on it. So I just tied it to the inside of Vincent's little laser cover that you see right here. There's a post in behind there, so I just tied it to that and then pushed those back in. And then on the back I have another one on the back of his head, and I tied the thread around the bottom of his head so you can't see it. And then same thing with Bob, but I just tied up to his front claws. And then just have the wires come up, and I used an ice pick that I heated with a lighter to poke holes through here, and then laced the threads through these holes. And then I just hot glued this little spot. I used the same plastic I used for this molding. I just put a small little piece right here just to make it a little more solid, and then hot glued it in place, and then trimmed the threads and then painted it black so they don't look so obvious, but you know, I think it looks pretty cool. Let's see, so the next thing is the Meteor. So the Meteor was actually the funnest part of this whole thing to make, and it's also the most expensive because of the lights. So just about everything you see here is relatively inexpensive. I mean, the foam board is cheap and all the wood things, but the lights were expensive. So I'll get to that in just a minute. But to make that Meteor, I was wandering around Hobby Lobby, and they have these, oh, they're like Christmas ball decorations. They look like this. So they're just clear ones, and they only had 2 sizes, so I bought this one and that one because I didn't know what size I was going to need, so I went with the bigger one. But the way that I made that texturing on there, you can kind of see if I zoom in on it. See that kind of texture that's on there? So the way I did that is I took some hot glue, and then I just put a small bead of it on the ball right here, and I took one of these sticks and kind of started smearing it on there, put another bead, started smearing it, and just went around the whole thing until the whole thing was completely covered. And then any areas that were kind of thin on there, I just took some Elmer's glue and filled it in, so that way it, you know, you can't see all the way through. And then I took this stuff here. This is Tamiya clear orange model paint and clear red, and then I painted the whole thing. I painted in orange, and I put about 4 coats of orange on there, and then any thin areas I just put some red on there. But it makes it look pretty cool, and I gotta say it turned out better than I thought. And then when I put it back there to kind of see what it was going to look like, I realized that you could see behind it still. You could see where the tubes end and stuff. And so it gives away the illusion. So to cover that up, I just took some cotton and spread it out and then made it into a U shape so that it would fit back inside that corner. And then painted it up with some dark gray paint and a little bit of light gray for highlights. And it makes it look like there's a dust cloud where the meteor has already caused damage back there. So it looks pretty cool. I think it's a nice effect, and it also hides where the illusion ends back there. So now for the lights actually ended up being the most expensive part of this. So it was $130 for the lights, and the reason they were so expensive is because I wanted them to be specially made so that they kind of glow on and off like you see here. And so there's 4 LEDs in there, 2 red and 2 amber, and I wanted them to each have their own rate of ramping up and ramping down. And so my go-to place for lighting like this is a website called Tenacontrols, and I'll leave the link down below in the description so you can kind of check that out. It's a really cool website. They have specialty lighting kits for model kits, mainly a sci-fi genre, but the guy in charge there, his name is Ralph. He's a super nice guy, very helpful, very accommodating, and he will make just about anything you want. I've had him make 2 different custom lighting kits now for this, and then a Star Trek prop that I'll show in a future video that he did that looks great. And so so he's the guy that I go to for that. So I'm going to cut now to a video that I made, just a quick little one that kind of describes a little bit what I did with the lighting in here. Alright, so I just want to show what I've got going on here. So this is the circuit board for the lights for the Meteor here. So you got that part right there. So we got 4 LEDs. I did put some liquid electrical tape on these leads here because they are kind of exposed. So yeah, that way, because when these are inside of this thing here, I don't want them touching inside of the ball, inside of the Meteor. I don't want them touching inside of there, and then, you know, they get, you know, shorted out. So that's what I'm doing with this. Now, there was a bit of miscommunication when I ordered this. I asked for a battery box to be included with this, or a battery holder and a switch, and it didn't come with one. So I ordered one on Amazon. It turns out they actually have a 9-volt battery box that this will fit in, and it even has a switch built in, so that'll be really nice. So all I got to do is solder these 2 leads to it, and then that should make it a lot easier. So but for now I'm just using this battery clip just to test the lighting. So I am going to hot glue the leads in here. So I'm going to put the lights inside of this, and I'm going to arrange it so that I'll just hot glue them around the edge inside of here, and make sure that all the lights are pointing in a certain way that I'm hoping I can make it look, you know, somewhat spread out. I'm going to try not to have any hot spots with the lights, but I think it'll work out all right. So anyway, that's what we're going to do with this. Okay, so now we can see back here, this is the battery box that I was talking about earlier. It's got the switch, and the 9-volt battery goes in there. It's really great. It's all one unit, so you know, it's just easier. So all I had to do was solder the battery leads onto this, and it was ready to go. So thankfully, I don't know if I mentioned it in that previous segment, but Ralph actually solders all the wires to the board, which is great, so you don't have to deal with that, because it's really fiddly stuff. So anyway, that worked really good. And then I just put a piece of Velcro on there so I could just take it off easily to change the battery out. But yeah, I think this worked out pretty good. I think the lights are what really makes this thing come to life, and I think it looks really cool. It gives these guys kind of a neater place to be displayed. So oh gosh, I was probably just covering the microphone there, wasn't I? Anyway, so I was saying that I think that the lights really make this set pop, and makes it come to life. So anyway, maybe I hope you like this. I mean, you know, it was a fun project to work on, since we all have time to kind of sit at home with all the stuff going on right now. It was fun to work on something like this, and I love doing this kind of stuff anyway, where you just kind of make it up. And so it turned out better than I thought it was going to. Like I said, it was just kind of, I really just kind of made it up as I went, but it turned out pretty good. So I hope this inspires you guys to bring out your creativity and make a fun little diorama for your black hole figures, or, well, any figure really. I mean, you can use whatever figure you want, and you don't have to spend a lot of money. I mean, I did spend a lot of money on the lighting, but you know, for you guys that have electronics knowledge, you can just whip that up probably really cheap. So, but it turned out pretty nice, and it was fun to build. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. Check out my other videos if you get a chance, and thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I hope your day is great.